thank everybody for joining and welcome everyone to our third edition of the Coach's Corner with head women's volleyball coach Emma Celentano. And again, kind of a little background of how our Coach's Corner will go. We'll kind of do a brief introduction of Coach Emma, and then we'll open it up for a Q&A session. So if you have any questions for Coach, make sure to put it into the chat, and we'll get to them as they come in. And again, so we'll just kind of, take it from there. So Coach, we'll kind of let you give a brief introduction to yourself, kind of, where you're from and your journey as you came into Mount Olive. So we'll let you take it away.
Sweet. So I've been prepping my intro all morning, very nervous about it, because my illustrious history as the UMO head coach is 6 months and 22 days, but who's counting? So not a lot of history, obviously, at the University of Mount Olive, but what we've done to this point, I'm super excited about, and I'll kind of give you what we've done pre-pandemic, in the midst of the pandemic, and then kind of where we're headed. So I did get some semblance of a normal spring season. So got to train with my team for about a month and a half, which was awesome. So the kind of two things we were really working on, whether they knew it or not, was air PTSD is what I've called it. So we were very fearful to just kind of play. I'm calling it let it rip, because I guess maybe that in their past, whether at club, previous coaches, kind of heavily penalized that portion of the game. And that's not really my style. We're not going to win very many matches by sending over a lot of easy stuff. So we were kind of learning this risk reward as it pertains to scoring. And the second big thing we were really working on this spring was just kind of culture, building this cohesion among the team. And I was really kind of, whether they knew it or not, on this concept, hey, players play, coaches coach. So trying to just get a feel for seniors, freshmen, transfers, getting this vibe that, hey, we're all kind of one unit here. And if we're not going to like anyone, might as well be me, for making hard decisions, kind of being the accountability person. That shouldn't be a player's responsibility, because it really creates animosity that doesn't need to happen, because just with the length of time, the amount of time we spend together, going to happen pretty naturally anyways. So we're kind of moving some of those accountability responsibilities off of upperclassmen and onto me, because I'm the one getting paid the big bucks. And then the only thing we really missed out on this spring, when they left for spring break and then kind of never returned, was being able to compete against some outside competition. So that's the one thing that we really didn't get, that I would have loved to have had. But we did a really nice job of the time that we did have in the gym training. Every Friday, we'd kind of bring back some of our seniors just to have some extra bodies. And we were able to throw up our camera, and we really called it kind of Competition Friday. So we filmed about 4 of those. And then we kind of, over the pandemic, we set up these video sessions in position. And we were kind of reviewing those and seeing who we are and who we want to become, and a little bit of what we did last year and what we're going to modify. So that's kind of what we did during the quarantine, other than work out every day. And then our goals for this season, big goal, is to make the conference tournament. Kind of plain and simple, we got to be 1 spot better in order to do that. And if it turns into 4 spots better, 4th in the conference, 5th in the conference, that'd be awesome. So we'll kind of adjust that as we get into training, into matches. Is kind of where we've been. Very weird start, obviously, and where we want to go. So I'm very excited about what we've done and where we're hopefully headed.
Well, I mean, if you're going to have a start, have one with a little bit of excitement, right?
Yeah, right. It's just weird being at home for so long, gosh. But yes, I think I'm hoping that concept of the distance makes the heart grow fonder kind of works for us too. Like, we're just going to come back one big, happy, excited volleyball family.
There you go. So first question off the bat, you kind of touched on it a little bit. What has been the biggest coaching change for you? I mean, you touched on a few of them, but if you had to pick the big one, what would be the biggest coaching change for you since coming from NC Central?
Yeah, I think the biggest change is just kind of moving into that chief role, like, and then also being, I don't want to say alone, because it's not like I've been isolated, but everything, not Ali's in the midst of his season in the spring, obviously. So every kind of planning, training, and then execution aspect kind of was all on me, which I think has its phenomenal benefits though too. But when at NCCU in an assistant or associate head coach role, show up an hour beforehand, and I was, directed on, hey, Emma, this is what I'd like you to get accomplished today. Or Emma, you're going to have this position group. Let's build out the drill structure, the practice, given these contexts, these variables, these timing. And now those decisions are all on me. So I consult myself a lot rather than being consulted on. So that was a big change. One that I think I adapted to quite well, or so far I've done quite well. We'll see with a bit more time, or, not a month and a half and then go home, Emma, how that looks. But I really was liking that so far.
Okay. So again, this is something you touched on as well. If you had to pick the biggest change that you implemented since being here, and I know you said that, it's been a short stint since you started and it's been kind of chaotic and there's been a lot of things that have made it, we'll call it special, right? Since you've started here, you touched on, at least you got some spring practice in, right? And the video sessions and, at least from before I changed office locations, seeing the team run around the top of the arena, which was entertaining in itself. What would you say was probably the biggest change that you implemented when you took over?
Yeah, so not to get, too heavy into volleyball and the meaning of things, but we kind of were, and Nicole can probably speak to this maybe even better, but we were really harping on set tempo, specifically to the outside. So got there, and when I started evaluating in those first couple practice sessions, we were really used to a ball that kind of flew like this. And I'm looking at it and I'm like, well, Star was top 20 in kills in the conference. Anaya, an outside hitter that's since graduated, also top 20 kills in the conference and attack efficiency. So I'm like, well, clearly this worked to some degree. And I started to think about it and play around with it and started to change that set tempo to a little more like this. And I'm like, Star and Anaya, when we had her in there on Fridays, D was swinging on the outside a bit for us, Cam. They seemed to be making fewer errors when the set kind of moved from this to this. And I was like, well, fewer errors is a good thing for us. So we were really harping on this concept of set tempo and it being hittable, because this idea behind this is that you're faster and you're beating a block, but that doesn't really work great if the person on your side of the net is unable to hit it. So we were really kind of getting that concept and a feel for the timing of that. And then the other thing that we were really kind of changing is that just looking at our structure and our personnel, probably going to be in a 6-2 more often than not. And that's what they ran quite a bit last season. So just within that system, you're going to be using quite a few substitutions. So we were really working on our outside hitters running this backcourt attack. We're calling it a BIC. Some places called a pipe, a B. Names change everywhere. So getting them used to running that and what the tempo of that is. So just a lot of setting and hitting connections and really defining what we're trying to do offensively was a big change and focus for us this past spring. And that's one thing that just as a coach, really big on is if we're not able to kind of verbalize what we're trying to do, then I've probably done a pretty poor job of explaining to you what we're trying to do. So us just being on the same page with what we're trying to accomplish, how we define certain things, so that we're actually able to execute it because we know what it is. So that was what we were really, really harping on this spring.
So obviously a lot of changes and keeping some things the same, but in mixing it up a little bit, kind of, making some changes for the good, but keeping some similarities to kind of help keep that consistency and keep the team strong in what they were doing good at, but then trying to get some different things to kind of help strengthen them up a little bit.
Absolutely.
I know we've had some new people jump on, so just kind of as a reminder, if you have any questions for Coach Emma, just punch them into the chat, and we'll get to them as we go through. As you're getting a sip of water there. So kind of, we've talked about the future just a touch. Again, this is your first year. So what is the thing that you're looking forward to the most in your first season at the helm of the Trojan? What's going to be that one thing that you're the most excited about?
Yeah, I think it's getting to see this group of girls play in a more relaxed environment. And I don't want to say that I'm just going to be kind of, hands up, straddled on the bench. Not that at all. We're going to be very prepared and very disciplined. But I also want the girls to have this understanding of what's going to help us win. And generally speaking, some added pressure from me isn't going to do it. So again, us being on the same page with what we're trying to do, and then come Friday and Saturday, those days are for you guys. Those days are for Olivia, Dee, Nicole, Mia. Like, that's all about you guys. And our preparation up to that point, that's all on me. And then I just want to see you guys play. I want it to feel almost like that. And that was also a phrase that we kind of threw around this spring, is kind of making volleyball fun again. Because I've just watched a lot of players play, and when they really are just playing and they're kind of getting into a flow state and the anxiety is a little bit lessened, they generally play and perform the best. So trying to be that personality that allows for that kind of growth, so that the girls can truly just find one joy. And then I think in turn that will produce quite a bit. I'm hoping quite a few more wins, but again, my goal is just get one spot better. So that's really what I'm most excited for, is kind of this culture change in the leadership that is me, and how that kind of bleeds into what the girls are able to do on the court.
Okay. Obviously, you have the core set now, but then there's the next set that comes in. But that next set has had its set of challenges with what's gone on here in the past couple of months. Every coach is different. Every coach recruits differently. What challenges have you faced trying to recruit during the coronavirus pandemic? Because obviously we know volleyball, the AAU circuit is a huge aspect when it comes to tournaments and everything that goes on with those. And a lot of those got shut down. A lot of them didn't play. A lot of the juniors national tournaments got canceled and things like that. So what has it been like for you on the recruiting side? Because I'm sure there were places that you were thinking of going and can't go there anymore because they're not happening. So kind of give us an insight to what that has been like on the recruiting side, because obviously half of it's the players you have now, but then it's the preparing for the future and what you bring in. So talk to us a little bit what that's been like.
Yeah, recruiting has been, I'm going to say, extremely challenging, and is forced. And that is one of my big philosophies, is that I have to be able to adapt. And this quiet period, dead period in some portions of the quarantine, and then just a lot of cancellations, obviously coronavirus numbers and cases higher in certain areas, tournaments getting shut down, wanting smaller groups, and national qualifiers don't really classify as smaller groups. It's really challenged me to become better at recruiting virtually. So becoming a better evaluator of video online, reaching out. I have a whole note on my laptop about creative ways to kind of engage recruits, either through social media or just in the way that we dialogue. So not making it, hey, Susie, let's talk at 10 a.m. on Tuesday. We can FaceTime. Let's have a separate Zoom session that includes you and your parents, and we can kind of do this Q&A. A lot of, I don't want to call them awkward, but definitely different. I would say that kind of video conferencing, Zoom, FaceTime wasn't a huge part of how I recruited before, but that kind of face-to-face and interaction, and a recruit being able, like Ashley, being able to see that I have facial expressions, mannerisms, like that makes it more real for not only her, but for myself. And I think that those kind of more personal interactions than just hearing my voice over the phone, they really matter in kind of making an imprint on a recruit. And then as far as just the evaluation side, outside of the contacting piece, I really have tried to get better at evaluating film online, and not getting distracted, because that's what tends to happen, and then requesting either from the player herself or her recruiting coordinator, high school coach, just additional film that's either more often uncut so that I can see kind of the full spectrum, errors, everything like that, and just making sure that I'm gathering as much data as I can, because not having it in person is not an excuse, because everyone else is figuring out how to adapt. So if I'm not, then I'm just getting behind. So that's really where we've kind of put the emphasis, is being more creative in our contacts. And then also me getting better at recruiting or evaluating through this 13-inch screen.
Which I can only imagine has got to be difficult. So a follow-up question to that, in the eyes of you, what does a UMO women's volleyball player look like? You have to look at film. You can't be there in person for a lot of these things, and the in-person is so limited right now. What does a UMO women's volleyball player look like?
Wow. Yeah.
Or what does the future women's volleyball player look like, I should say?
Yeah. Well, one, I think I do need to say that we have great skill and talent on this team presently. So we're definitely, looking to this 2020 season. We're not just looking to go through the motions. Like, we're trying to make these on-court changes, because we do have the personnel, in my opinion, to start really making runs, and to be in that top third and just progressively challenge for conference championships and then stay there. Longevity is always the piece that we're looking for. So then when I'm evaluating, definitely depends on position. So attackers, the first thing that kind of jumps out to me is, hey, can we jump high and swing hard? That's kind of the first thing that I really, oh man, okay, we can do that. Now let's kind of look at some of these ancillary, not ancillary, very important, but some of these other skills within the position. Can we pass? Can we play great defense? Do we give great effort? Setting, kind of the same thing. How high are we blocking? I want tall people across the board. Volleyball is a tall person's sport, so that's kind of the first thing that we're going for. And then the adaptation and the adjusting from there is, again, in my wheelhouse, has to be a part of my job. So then just becomes the comparison. Okay, she's 2 inches taller, but this kid's skill, I think, is, worth more than the 2 inches that this other kid is bringing. So it's kind of that balance. And I think that it can look any number of ways. And to be honest, like, the future, in my opinion, looks super good. Got a couple of recruits on here right now, all of which are tall, taller than I, which isn't hard to do, being 5'4". So I probably shouldn't discriminate based on that. But yeah, it looks different in each position, and it's all about just kind of finding this balance of adding to our skill. Are you a piece that does something different than what we have now, and or does something better than what we presently have?
Okay.
Hard answer.
Yeah, I know. I can't give you everything as an easy question.
I'm waiting for the hot dog question.
You're waiting for it. It's getting ready to come, except it's not going to be a hot dog question, I promise. So again, if anyone on the call has any questions, make sure to punch them in the chat as we go along. Here comes the fun question. We had one last week, and it inspired me. It's not food. Vacation. Preference the beach or the mountains, and why?
Gosh, I'm more of a mountain person, because I feel as though the connotation at the beach, and this is totally probably wrong, is that you lay around, you pool, you tan, and that's just not me. So I'm kind of more of this action sport. I like to hike. I like to snowboard. I like adventure. I like activity, and you can definitely find that at the beach. But I also like to shield myself from the sun. So the mountains is kind of
more my scene.
More my scene.
We're not going to go down that route. Okay, so I had to ask you something at least kind of off the wall.
Yeah, I love it.
So what style of play can we anticipate from the Trojans in their first season under the helm of you?
Yeah, style. I think if I were to pin it down to one word, I do want it to be aggressive. So and kind of aggressively intelligent, let's say, because where I've been, like I was indicating in an earlier question answer, where we were putting a lot of emphasis was in the learning component. So we talked a lot about risk reward as it relates to attacking. So we really want to I really want to see that start to translate. And the part of that is the risk. So I want the girls taking those, and then us kind of week to week, practice to practice, match to match, kind of learning from those risks, talking about when it produced the reward, and maybe when in that situation the risk wasn't quite worth taking, and what maybe our better options were. So kind of under that umbrella of aggressive, we want to be blocking high. We want to be swinging hard, swinging fast, which is going to come with some airs. We want our defensive moves to kind of equal the speed that is being produced on the other side, which is fast. I mean, our Conference Carolina is producing some pretty good volleyball. So that's kind of, and then serving being kind of a big key for us is we want that to not just be the initiation of a play. We want it to be a point scoring opportunity, and worst case kind of helping us to set up a point scoring opportunity for ourselves offensively. So getting an easier ball back because you produce something hyper aggressive as the initiation.
So you've mentioned a little bit throughout this time the ability to change and adapt, and again the time that you've had with the team and where you want the future of this team to be, and the end goal of the first season to be moving up in the conference standings. And I'm sure every coach does this. They watch film of every team in the conference and what that team looks like, and obviously not knowing what those teams are going to look like the next season, right? Because they recruit different players and change, and sometimes they change their philosophies and their coaching styles and everything that goes within that. So for you, what is the necessary changes that you guys have to make as a team? You talked about a little bit of what you have to do as a team to be successful, but what is the whole roundabout thing that has to be done for you guys to make those steps up in the conference this year?
Yes. So two things that I one, the quarantine had the biggest pro from it was that I had the time to watch a lot of film. So I think I've watched at this point, I've watched almost every match they played last year, which provided some great data points, some great insights as to this seems to be a trend for us. This seems to be an improvement point. We have these tendencies. And I think the two biggest things that will make an immediate difference, other than us just spending time together and training, one, service. There are only a few things in a match that I can control. Timeouts, substitutions, the initial lineup, I get to write it in. And then the other thing is kind of directing and game planning that initial contact. So when I watched, the team last year didn't appear to have, at least not with any consistency, a lot of direction and, hey, D, I want you to serve here. Let's try to get the ball to this young lady, just with hand signals. So that is something that we have already started implementing and will absolutely be a norm for us. That I will be controlling where our initiation is going to try and get something advantageous for us defensively, again, to help us score. And I want the girls to be on the same page with what that game plan is, because again, having that understanding, I think just makes the execution side of it quite a bit easier. And that was the other kind of big thing that I hinted at, is us just being totally on the same page offensively. Hey, this week we got a smaller right side blocker. We're gonna want to use our outsides a ton, Nicole, Mia, whoever's setting. that's who we're going to want to isolate for at least those 3 rotations. Hey, Cam, D, when you're on the outside, we want you swinging line to take advantage of that blocking matchup. And when I watched the girls play, I don't know that I necessarily saw the cohesion between coach, player, what we're trying to achieve. So that is definitely going to be on my mind as I train, practice, and as we kind of game plan for this season. And I think that those 2 things are going to make a huge difference because when I had the opportunity to watch these teams in quarantine, we have the attacking, the pop, the height, all the kind of things that you want in a team to be able to compete. It's not like we're severely outmatched in speed or in physicality, height, anything like that. So it's just about us game planning and us being able to then execute that game plan, ideally at a high level.
So it's basically just getting them to buy into whatever the strategy is for that week, and then everybody kind of being on the same page. Just makes sense.
Yes, and they have to know it. So I have to do my job to explain it or demonstrate it or show you it. And that's huge because I feel like a lot of times that there is a disconnect between I don't know what coach is asking me to do. And that's not a player's problem. That is very much my problem.
That makes sense. Next question coming in. What is and again, don't expect this to be a Mount Olive memory just yet, but what is your favorite coaching memory?
Coaching memory. Oh man. Oh, Ryan. I think we might have had a stumper.
There's no such thing as a stumper when it comes to these.
Yeah. Well, I will say this. This was funny. So it was my birthday last spring season, I guess 2 spring seasons ago. I'm at Central and my team saran wrapped my car and then put balloons on it. So it doesn't specifically have anything to do with me actually coaching, but I like that kind of, for my team to feel at ease enough to saran wrap my car to ensure that I don't go anywhere.
You were outside of the car, correct?
Yes, I was outside the car.
Just making sure that was known. Okay. Safety first.
Pretty funny and a fond memory that I have of the members of that team that did that and are now going on to do bigger and better things. Yeah.
It's a lot of saran wrap.
It was a lot of dedication, both with financial means to produce that much saran wrap or to go get it, and then to invest that time into doing it. There was also a nice balloon on the car that said happy birthday.
Well, there you go. At least it was a happy birthday.
Yeah, right.
Another question coming in. Favorite superhero?
Favorite superhero? So I will preface this. I'm like pop culture, like the worst ever. So I couldn't tell you probably the last movie that I saw in theaters. Granted, that's 2 months for all of us anyways, but me dates way further back than that. So favorite superhero, we'll go Wonder Woman, because I like the female power behind that. Yeah.
Nothing wrong with that.
Right.
Nothing wrong with that at all.
Got the thumbs up.
You gotta love the emojis on the Zoom calls. Love them.
Yeah, I do.
I love it. Well, we'll take one final question here, unless we see anything pop up. What would be your advice for student athletes transitioning from the high school level to the collegiate level? What should they expect in those first couple of weeks, those first couple of months? What's your advice to them coming in?
Yeah, that is great. And I get that question quite a bit as it pertains to recruits asking what the biggest difference is between club volleyball and then transitioning to college volleyball. So the biggest difference, like volleyball wise, or in making that transition, is just the amount of time and the ball speed. So timing wise, I get, per the NCAA, 20 hours of your week, which quite literally is a part-time job. So then you couple that with school, and you're going to be busy. You're going to be more tired than you ever have been. And I think that kind of catches a lot of players off guard because they look at their high school season and it's about as long in most cases. And it's they go to practice every day after school. But the amount of studying that you now have to do outside of class, coupled with the social, I don't want to call them pressures because that's the beauty of college, but we'll say social opportunities, in addition to kind of this career preparation, produces a lot of stress that you don't get at the high school level. And then you couple that with, I'm on my own for the first time. And some of us thousands of miles away from home, some of us in totally different time zones where that kind of contact to your normal core base is not as easily accessible. So you kind of had this big storm cloud of change that volleyball can very easily get lost in that. And your performance can be reduced just with, increased stress, increased anxiety, loss of sleep, not eating normally, struggling with food, nutrition changes at the calf, any number of things like that. So I think for my job and my role within that is to make it very clear that it's normal. You feeling sad, totally normal. So kind of normalizing those feelings, stresses, pressures, and not minimizing them, not making it seem like, hey, you'll be over it tomorrow, but making it very clear that my door is open as a resource. We have other resources if they're more qualified, better, you feel more comfortable, such as counseling, nurse health services. I love Courtney. She's a great listener. So just giving people, my players in particular, every opportunity to get the help that they need to feel comfortable and to feel ready to play, because no one comes into college, wanting to not perform, wanting not to play, to just kind of be along for the ride. So me being a part of that journey and learning or helping them learn what it takes to perform at their best, to get on the court, to see play time, to succeed in the classroom, career preparation, just making those conversations a normal part of our program is kind of my role in helping all of that change, that storm cloud I kind of referenced.
Well, great answer. We actually will take one final question here. And this affects so many, not only just in the high school ranks, but a lot of the transfers as well. What is your advice to incoming players that may not have a senior season, or call it their sophomore season if they're coming in as a transfer, due to the coronavirus circumstances? What's your advice to them? Obviously, to stay engaged and to keep their skill sets up to coming into Mount Olive. Obviously, if they've already been recruited, that's part of it. But to continue those skill sets up, it's one thing for the players that are already here to, they've got, those plans already in place to, these are the things they need to do to stay in shape. But with the ones coming in, they don't have those plans necessarily yet, or they're not used to those routines. So what's your advice to them who may not have a senior season yet, because, some schools may not have classes this year, at least in the public school ranks?
Yeah, I think it's super tough, number one. So clubs are back up and running. So my advice to a 2021 who might not get their fall senior season is to kind of channel that maybe disappointment. Maybe you were someone contending for a state title, or really looking just to have fun with your other seniors, or you really like the members of your high school team. Find other opportunities to play, kind of create your own season. So if it's a situation where you really liked your seniors, grab your 4 other senior friends, senior volleyball members, and find an opportunity to play in a grass tournament, or in a just all register for the same camp at a local club. So I think finding opportunities to stay engaged that way will kind of minimize some of the disappointment with having a lost season. And then looking to channel some of that disappointment into, well, what's the next step into that preparation? Where am I going to play club this season? Reach out to, if you're already committed or you're pretty close, reach out to the schools that you're speaking with or that you're committed to, and ask what that coach thinks you should be doing in this fall season that may not occur in some areas. So I think just having those conversations with the people that are knowledgeable, your club coaches, your high school coaches, your potential college coaches or future college coach, they can kind of offer some direction at a time where it's very difficult as a student athlete, for sure. And then, so you didn't get your senior season, so have the best freshman college season ever in fall of 21 is kind of what I would recommend most too. Get in super great shape, start getting it going in the club kind of a little earlier because clubs are still going to run, and just kind of refocus your preparation or how you're preparing into that mindset, into that aspect, I'd say.
I think that's a great way to answer that question. Coach, we appreciate your time, and we're really excited to see the future of this Trojan women's volleyball program and all the success that they're going to have moving forward. So we appreciate your time. We appreciate everyone that was on the call and the questions that we got. Again, if you have any questions for Coach Celentano, make sure to send those to her via email. Also, you can give her a phone call as well. Again, we appreciate her time and wish her and the Trojans the best of luck this season.
Thanks, Ryan. Thank you, guys.